Hi, welcome to HowtoDandD. My name is Fred Wheeler and today I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons. And today's topic, as it happens, is not just Dungeons and Dragons 5e. They have put out a new product. It's been out for quite a while, but it's new for me because I've only just been able to get it. And that is the Dungeons and Dragons Essentials Kit. This thing, yes, I have had time to have a close look at the product and make an assessment. I have obviously used the original Dungeons and Dragons starter set. I've done a review of the Stranger Things starter set, and this product is for your money. For what you get in this box is a really good deal. I'm going to say that right now. It's an extremely good deal. It is definitely worth your money. But there are a few things that I thought were a bit odd, a few things that are fantastic. So the Dungeons and Dragons Essentials Kit is the development of our designers, Wizards of the Coast, looking at their products and deciding that they needed to do something else with the product, because even though it was a great product, the original Dungeons and Dragons starter set, there were complaints. People were not happy with the product. They felt like they weren't getting very much in their box. And the box was quite large. I can tell you now, the box, when it's got all its stuff in it, is quite heavy and it's quite full. If you take everything out and assemble everything, and really there's only a box inside there to assemble, and it's pretty full. You might be able to squeeze a little bit more in there, maybe a couple of pencils and an extra set of dice or something like that. But other than that, it's a pretty full box. On the front, we get some pretty good artwork. I didn't have any issue with the original Dungeons and Dragons artwork on the box myself. You get a white dragon and a couple of player characters. In this case, they don't really show you an entire party. There's no party of 4 or 5 individuals. We only get 2 individuals. So the focus, I think, for this box is more about not just playing, you can play it with 2 to 6 players. So their intention is not 3 to 6, but 2 to 6. In other words, you can play this with 1 player if you really needed to. And that's what this has been released for, specifically. On the back, it gives you a breakdown of all the stuff that's inside, which I thought was pretty good. It's got a nice little picture of everything that's there. We get a 64-page rulebook, which teaches you how to create your own characters from level 1 to 6, which is great. It gives you the Dragon of Icespire Peak introductory adventure, which I will talk about very briefly in this video, but I will give you a basic rundown. I'll have to go into that in more detail in a later video. There's a map, a poster map that's double-sided. There's a Dungeon Master screen, which I think was a great addition. There are 6 blank character sheets. I have more to say about that later. There are 11 polyhedral dice, which is quite amazing. That's quite a lot of dice in a set like this. Normally you only get 6 or 7 and that's it. The original Dungeons and Dragons starter set only had, I believe it was 6 dice and no percentile dice. There are 81 cards describing magic items, sidekicks and more stuff, and I'll go over them in detail about what I think is good and what is bad. And then it provides you with some unique codes. So you can get 50% off the digital version of the player's handbook, apparently. And there's also a unique code for a digital version of the Dragon of Icespire Peak Adventure. That's not a PDF. That is just access online to actually look at the content, which is not very useful unless you sort of do a screenshot or you use the snip tool to pull things out. I feel like when I was navigating through it was a little bit of a pain. And then there's an accessory, a supplementary adventure, content that takes you beyond Dungeons and Dragons or Dragon of Icespire Peak. So, really good products, great stuff, and a basic look at it. Honestly, the box is pretty full. There's a whole bunch of different things in there. There is included a sort of a fold-up box to keep all the cards in once you punch them all out, so you don't have to worry about them sort of being scattered everywhere throughout your box. So all very clever things to do in terms of its design. Okay, so let's break it down. I'm going to start with what I think are the most important aspects of the box and work my way through to the least important as far as I'm concerned. So let's start off with the adventure. Dragon of Icespire Peak. Front cover work, I don't have an issue with it. It's fine. It invokes the idea of Dungeons and Dragons, and the adventure, it's quite clear that there's going to be a dragon involved. And if you're going to play Dungeons and Dragons, there should be a dragon involved. The thing about this adventure is it's a sandbox, very much so. It's more like a bulletin board or a a quest board scenario. There are 3 key adventures that the players can undertake, and the rest are sort of fillers or things they can do around the other 3 main adventures. So I think that's a good idea. I think the idea of at least giving them 3 main quests that they can follow is a good plan. The layout of the adventure was reasonably good in terms of finding stuff. What I did find is that there's a whole lot of information in there, and if you've already got this box, you probably already found this problem right now, is that the amount of information on a non-player character is very minimal. In fact, it really leaves it completely up to the Dungeon Master to figure out most of that. There are a couple of NPCs that are detailed, but really you have to do all the rest of the work, and there's plenty of work to be done. So that means I'm going to be busy for many, many years from now, I imagine. On the back, they have placed a map key. There are plenty of maps. Essentially, the adventure book is laid out like you get like maybe 2 or 3 pages. There's an adventure map, and that location might be combat focused, it might be combat or roleplay, or might be just roleplay or just exploration. So they have covered all of their bases pretty well. I'm not sure that I understand why the key is on the back of the book, but maybe if you are flipping through and you come to a map inside the book, it would probably be easier, I guess, just to turn the book over and have a look at the back page. Although I felt like this particular map key would have been really helpful, particularly to a new Dungeon Master, if it was actually just a card that you could sort of clip onto your Dungeon Master screen or just lay out in front of you behind a Dungeon Master screen if you wanted to. But then again, everybody's got their own preference. The dice. Now there are 11 dice. That's 4 6-sided dice. There are 2 20-sided dice for rolling advantage and disadvantage. Really, it only really helps if you're all going to use the same set of dice. It might be a bit tricky, but I'm sure you can share. And then, of course, for your 4-sided dice, you get 1. Your 8-sided dice, you get 1. Percentile 1. Your 10 and your 12, you get 1. And so that covers your bases, and that's not too bad. Now the reason for 4 6-sided dice is they are anticipating that players and Dungeon Masters might allow the rolling of hit dice. So hit points. So hit points are rolled with 4 dice, drop the lowest of those 4, and you pick the 3 that are the highest, and that's going to contribute to your ability scores. Now, for those of you who know my channel, yes, I did test these dice. I tested all of the dice. They are transparent, which is a good sign. That means that the chances are that they will be balanced and roll in a more random nature. So I tested them in sugar water, did my flotation test, and yes, they are balanced. That's a good sign. I think that's a really good improvement. And cherry red is a nice colour. It's a good colour. Okay. Next, one of the maps that's included in here is of the Sword Coast. It gives you really, I would say, maybe 6 or 7 major locations, of which the adventure may not necessarily be taking place in those locations. Or if it is, it's only briefly. I feel like they could have placed a few more landmarks that were not related to the adventure itself, in terms of the side quests and the 3 main adventures that are presented to you. It does feel a little bit like a bounty board, or a bounty hunter board in some respects, but I felt like they could have included a few more locations just to sort of make it a bit more, fill it out a little bit more. Now the problem with doing that, I guess, is that if you do that, then players will want to go there, and if you don't have material in the adventure prepared for that location, then you create a problem. So I can understand them not doing that, but that's what I would have liked myself. But for now, if you're a new Dungeon Master, it doesn't really matter. They have included a map of Phandalin. What I did notice about Phandalin is some of the locations are not the same as you would have found in the Lost Mine of Phandelver. So I would say that there are fewer locations marked on the map than there were on the map provided in the Lost Mine of Phandelver. That I felt like was a bit of a shame, but they have only selected, I think it's about 6 or 7 key NPCs in Phandalin that are repeats from the Lost Mine of Phandelver. So you don't get every single one, and you probably know how long it would take you to get through all of them, because I did a video on just about every single one of them just recently. So I can understand them leaving those out, but it would have been nice to at least have put a ledger or a mark to indicate where they are. So these are all good things. These are things you can lay out for your players so they can see what's going on. These are the sorts of things as a dungeon master, when you were running the Lost Mine of Phandelver, that you would have printed out anyway to show to your players. I don't know that there have been too many dungeon masters who haven't done that. I certainly know that I did it. Okay, the dungeon master screen. It's made of light card. It's still going to survive a reasonable amount of time. The artwork on the front is brilliant. So you've got your dragon, and then you've got a few sort of the environment. Then you've got your adventuring party who are moving towards that location. Very nice. I like the piece of artwork. That was great. What about inside? Inside, I was really impressed. Inside, this looks like the Dungeons and Dragons Dungeon Master screen, the reincarnated version, the really good one. What was a little bit odd is the panels look different though. So I went through it and I thought, hang on, I feel like everything's there. What's missing? Have they pulled anything out of there that was in the original Dungeons and Dragons reincarnated Dungeon Master screen? And so I did a little bit of processing, and I'm going to tell you what they've taken out, what they left. So the first two panels. The first panel includes everything that was originally in the Dungeons and Dragons reincarnated Dungeon Master screen. They have taken out suffocating rules. No suffocating rules. The second panel is the conditions, and somehow they have managed to squeeze everything for the conditions onto that one panel. They did it. I don't know how. They must have squeezed it up some way. So it's all there. Instead of taking up 1.5 panels like the original Dungeon Master screen for the reincarnated version, it only takes up one screen, or one panel, should I say. So that's excellent news. That means you've got all the conditions. That's all the information you really needed in terms of the conditions. Fantastic. What did they leave out? Well, in the third and fourth panel, they have rearranged the order in terms of where the charts sit. Everything is there. The only thing they have left out is exhaustion. The exhaustion table is gone. Everything else still exists. And all of this is really useful and helpful information. So I have to say that Dungeons and Dragons, the design team, get a great, huge thumbs up from me with regard to this. Because if you could take anything out, exhaustion and suffocating were probably perfectly acceptable as a reduction in terms of the content on the screen. That means really you don't need to go and buy the original Dungeon Master screen reincarnated if you don't want to, because it's really all there. Of course, this screen might not last quite as long. It might shift around a little bit because it's a bit more lightweight, but it's a pretty good deal if you ask me. Now, the Dungeons and Dragons Essentials Kit Rulebook, the front art cover, I didn't really see anything in this. It's a rule book. I suppose it doesn't have to be fancy, but I felt like they could have done a little bit more. What's inside is very impressive though. And what I found inside the book was you can create your own character from level 1 through to level 6. You get access to a number of races. So you get human, you get dwarf, elf, halfling, and human. I believe that's right. Those are the options, and you get 2 versions of each. I think that includes the human. I can't remember. It may not. The variant human may not be there. I can't remember exactly. What I do know is they provided you with 5 classes, not 4. So you get the fighter, the wizard, the cleric, and the rogue. 2 archetypes for each, and you also get the bard. That's 2 archetypes for the bard as well. Great. They did a really good job of breaking down the rules. I'm really impressed. I think this is a great rule book, even if it doesn't look too fancy. What did they do in the back? They put the conditions on the back of the rule book. I thought that was wonderful. You know what I would have thought would have been fantastic to put on the front of the rule book? Is the first section or panel of the Dungeon Master screen that talks about the different things you can do in combat. Rather than artwork, if they had just stuck that in sort of like a cheat sheet form. In fact, that was the one thing that was standing out for me, is there wasn't a piece of paper already made up for players that a Dungeon Master could give to their players that was a cheat sheet. That would have been like a really smart thing to do with new players, right? But it's not there. But this is still pretty good. Okay, you get a bunch of character sheets. They're all blank. Nobody's going to probably use the original hard paper stock character sheets that are all blank. I thought that was kind of ridiculous, personally. I thought one blank character sheet that they could photocopy, and the rest should have been pre-made characters as far as I'm concerned. I'm all for people making their own character, but for those people who just want to get in there and play for now and make a character, so maybe some other time, that seemed like a silly thing to do, just to put a whole lot of blank character sheets. Should have been just one blank, and the rest could have been pre-made character sheets ready to go right then and there at level 1, and with the same thing that they did with the original Dungeons & Dragons starter set. I thought that was a fantastic development. Alright, now the cards. The cards, there are things in these cards that I thought were fantastic, and what they've done is they made magic item cards. There's a lot of magic items in this adventure. In fact, there are at least, I think, it's 4 sheets of magic cards. Now you can hand these to your player. Fantastic idea. Should have happened a long time ago. I thought this was brilliant. This was wonderful. And a lot of the magic items are really, really cute. They do silly things, or they don't have a huge mechanical combat focus to them. The Cloak of Billowing is in there, and I thought that was a wonderful idea. So big plus for that. Great. Here's the sidekicks. There are sidekick rules in the rulebook, so don't worry about that. And the monsters are in the adventure, the stat blocks for them, and some artwork. So these are sidekicks. So you get some cards that you can separate, and you get a picture on one side, and on the other side is the character, whatever that sidekick is. So it gives you sort of a bit of a breakdown, personality, bonds, flaws, ideals. I don't like this. I don't like this. Now the reason why I don't like this part of it is because it means that players, if they're playing with a sidekick, are now going to be trying to role-play the sidekick. It's hard enough to do one character. Why 2? This makes an excellent tool for a dungeon master for NPCs though. If you needed NPCs and a breakdown of how they work, brilliant. And for that, they get a big plus as far as I'm concerned. But I don't like the idea of them using it as a sidekick. I think that giving too much information to new players in terms of role-playing is not a good idea. These cards are quite a smart idea, and that is they are conditions. The conditions, they come with one side of the card is the picture, and on the other side it actually explains what the condition is. Good idea. It also gives you a small card that gives you a breakdown of the different steps in combat. And there's, I believe, 4 of them that you can dish out to players if you needed to. And this felt like a rather sort of limited cheat sheet. It could have been better as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, doesn't matter. Moving on. Next, what do we got here? We got quests cards. These quests in this adventure are very, very simple. I did not know why they needed to bother with these. I'm sure there are dungeon masters who had trouble with players forgetting what the quest was, and so giving them a card makes a lot of sense. Personally, I didn't think it was necessary. There is a quest card for every single quest, including the 3 main ones. I didn't think this was necessary. But it's there. This was stupid. These are initiative cards, so you break them off, hand them out, so that people know where they are in the initiative order. Okay. Seriously, somebody could have done that with a piece of cardboard themselves. So they get nothing from me for this. This I didn't like. Moving on to the box to store all the cards. Makes a lot of sense. I think that was actually a smart idea. It doesn't seem like it adds a lot of weight, but you know, to be able to store them some way rather than have them float around in the box, the original box, is probably a good idea. Comes with some advertising for their products. That's the original Dungeons & Dragons starter set, the Essentials Kit, Player's Handbook, Dungeon Master Guide, Monster Manual, a whole lot of other bits and pieces. And on the back you get these codes, which I think are really good. I think the inclusion as a digital form was a fantastic idea. I've already downloaded mine and I'm pretty happy with what I've seen. What did I think of this product? I think this product is more what people were hoping for originally. Now, for those of you who are saying, why is there no battle mat and why are there no tokens or pawns in here? Fair enough, but you might not realize, but the whole design team don't use miniatures anymore. They're moving away from using props, battle maps, grid, miniatures, tokens, pawns, or whatever else. And yes, they probably could have turned the initiative sheet into a number of tokens and maybe some, monster tokens as well, because there aren't a huge number of monsters in here. Really, that wouldn't have been terribly hard to do, I'm sure. I don't think it was necessary, and I think that it's actually moving Dungeons & Dragons away from the idea of needing props, even though you can see a grid in my picture right here. The adventure, I like the adventure layout. There are problems, and we're going to have to talk about them some other time because they are many. But in terms of layout and how to follow them and how easy to prepare, they do a great job of that. Other than that, I think this is a fantastic product. I think it's done a really nice job. And if you found this review useful in any way, then please go check out some of my other videos. I have a whole bunch of videos for players and dungeon masters you're welcome to go and check out. I have hundreds of them. If you want to support the channel so I keep doing content like this, I have a Patreon page. I have affiliate links to the book depository at Amazon, including a link to the Dungeons & Dragons Essentials Kit. I also have a merchandise shelf. Make sure to share, like, and subscribe. Hit the bell button to be notified when I go live and when I publish new videos. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.